If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of overthinking, emotional burnout, just really feeling stuck in some area of your life, even though maybe you've done a ton of self work, you've read the books, you've done some of the lessons, the journaling, the affirmations, this episode is for you. Today's guests don't just talk mindset, they help rewire it at the root. And the transformations are fast, deep, and long lasting. Welcome to the Fitness Simplified podcast. I'm Brooke Davis, women's functional nutritionist and fitness specialist with Elysian Women's Wellness, and I'm here to simplify your fitness. Ian Cox and Lori Shufelt are Master Practitioners of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, Timeline Therapy, and Hypnosis. They're also the founders of New Life Transformations. Through their work, they help people release the emotional patterns, limiting belief, and unconscious blocks that keep them stuck without needing to relive the past. Ian brings decades of experience in reprogramming deeply rooted patterns with speed and precision, while Lori's grounded, intuitive approach helps people reconnect with their true sense of self. Together, they create powerful transformation that brings clarity, confidence, and lasting change to every area of your life. Whether you are overwhelmed, burned out, or just ready to better your life, their signature process, the breakthrough experience, specializes in helping you shift from what's been making everything feel harder than it should. Welcome, Lori and Ian. Thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited to dive in.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I would love to start by sharing with the listeners just a little bit about you, kind of what brought you to your practice and helping people in this way. Ian, if you want to start.
Yeah. So I had a really strange childhood and started getting into understanding or kind of wondering what was going on behind the scenes when I was about 5 or 6. I started noticing that people who get into rapport tend to match each other physiologically. And I asked an older friend about that, and he didn't have an answer for me, but it opened up my curiosity for understanding how the unconscious mind works. And eventually I met some people who taught me how to go deeper in that stuff and how to release negative emotions and limiting beliefs and basically change anything that I wanted to be able to change inside.
Awesome. So your experience really stemmed from your childhood getting into this. And how about you, Lori?
Wow. I thought you were going to go with a completely different story there. I've always been into self-improvement, self-development, and wanting to learn as much as I can in this life and be the best that I can. And coming from a pretty traumatic childhood and not a great marriage. And I wanted to change my career and do something that helped me to feel more fulfilled, that where I'm helping people on a personal level. And I've always been interested in self-development. And so I'd actually had decided to become a life coach right before I met Ian and heard about neuro-linguistic programming. And so as soon as he told me about it, I was just committed to that's what I want to do with my life. And now it's been a couple years and here we are.
Awesome. So your transition was a little bit later in life coming into this. Cool. Well, that's a great, I feel like dynamic duo type story. So neuro-linguistic programming, say that 7 times fast. It's a subconscious reprogramming essentially. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. And you mentioned kind of hypnosis and that kind of thing in your description. So what kind of person usually comes to you? What are they struggling with when they reach out?
So what we find is that people are usually struggling in certain areas of life. So there are 7 areas of life, but most people are struggling in either health or relationships or their career. And so those are the 3 major ones. Most people don't seek you out to help with spirituality or with, sometimes they'll ask for help with family if there's family conflicts and stuff like that. But most people won't come to you for recreation. I don't take vacations like I should. Although that tends to be what gets sacrificed when people are working on their health, their relationships, and their career. And they're spending all that extra time on those things. And so most of the time, what people experience is that they're putting in all this effort and the results that they get don't match their effort. And so they go, wow, I'm getting diminishing returns for all this effort that I'm putting out. And so I'm sure you've had experiences where you've gone out and you've done your best for a project and then you expect something in return and maybe it isn't exactly to the level that you expected. And so that's usually what causes a person to get a hold of us and say, hey, I'm not getting the results that I want in my life.
Okay. That makes sense. So you mentioned 7 areas. I think health, relationships, career, but then so those are the main 3 that people come to for, but there are 7 in total that essentially need addressing. Is that accurate in order to make maybe those top 3 like fulfilled? Is that kind of where that comes from, or do they all play a role in some capacity, I'm assuming? Can you share what the other 4 are? You mentioned spirituality, but can you share what they are and then maybe a little bit of how they kind of intertwine?
Yeah. So family, spirituality, personal growth, and recreation are the other 4 areas of life.
Okay.
And so usually when let's say a person's having trouble in health, what we do is we focus down on what's going on in that area of their life. We don't look at any other areas of life unless we're trying to look for cross-contextual information, which usually we don't need to look for necessarily, unless a person says, they come to us with health problems and then they say, well, my relationship could be improved. Then we're going to look into their relationship too. Or, I'm not making as much money as I want. Well, then we're going to look into their career and their values for what they do for work and stuff.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to go a little bit off script because now I'm curious. So, from my perspective as, a coach, obviously I've worked with hundreds of women at this point, not thousands, maybe, if somebody's struggling with their health, I find that usually their health is like not the root cause. But what's interesting to me, what you said, is that you don't actually even look at the other areas unless they mention it. So I'm curious, do you find that even though somebody comes to you for whatever, maybe their career, but then maybe they don't necessarily, that's not their primary issue, but they are struggling in their relationship. Like, again, I've seen that really be impactful, but that's not something normally that you would address outside of their main issue. Am I understanding that?
Right. So I think what you're getting at is when one area of life affects another area of life, that comes out in our interview. Like when we do a free consultation with people and they're saying, I'm struggling with success. I'm not having the success I want. And then as we dig deeper, we find out they're having health problems and that's why they're not having success. Then that actually guides us to dealing with health, not success.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So you are actually addressing it, even though they're not maybe aware, and going into that subconscious part, that that's what's being impacted, but that's what you uncover in your initial interviews, which I've gone through with you guys. And there's a wide range of things you cover in there outside of tangents that people go on.
And I can give you an example. I worked with a lady, about 18 years ago, who had a business here in town, and she couldn't work her business because of fibromyalgia pain. And so it was really just a matter of getting rid of the pain. That was the only thing stopping her from being successful. So we just did something to get rid of the pain. And that took like a half an hour, able to work her business the way that she wanted to.
That's amazing. And for fibromyalgia, which is a, debatable concept, aren't they all, right? As far as the diagnosis goes, just unexplained pain that you have. Let's not dig any deeper. We'll just diagnose it. Okay. Yeah, pain science is a fascinating thing, and I love that you're going into that. You talk about releasing these emotional patterns like from the root. So, you talked a little bit about digging into these other areas, but what does this look like and how is this different from traditional approaches to like therapy or different trauma related treatments?
Okay, so kind of two parts to that. So the first part is what that looks like is like an emotionally clean slate. Like I'm sure you or even listeners can imagine a time when they felt anger in the past. And if you think about that time, you'll probably feel the charge of anger now, right?
Right.
And having an emotionally clean slate means being able to think back to those times, but actually feeling no charge of emotion at all. And so when you're imagining something that happened in the past, your unconscious mind doesn't realize that it's not happening now, right? And so that's why we feel those emotions now.
Right.
It's unresolved. And so by resolving it, it separates the nowness from the unconscious mind, so to speak. It lets the unconscious mind know that that was an event in the past. It resolves it so the unconscious mind doesn't attach negative emotions to that event anymore. And so what that does is it resolves your triggers. So, when you're going out in traffic and somebody flips you off or something, you feel triggered, right? Well, when somebody gets their triggers removed like this, then those types of events don't trigger them anymore.
They're more they're at choice. They have the freedom to choose their response as opposed to going forward automatically with the things that have triggered them in the past.
Right. Instead of
Yeah.
And so how that's different, or how we're different from a traditional approach, is that we work to make ourselves obsolete as fast as possible by creating autonomy or sovereignty for the person in their own life. It puts them back in control of their own life so that they don't need us anymore. That's totally different from traditional therapy where they want you coming back for 30 years.
Yeah. Yes, because that's the wheel, right? That sounds insanely powerful. I'm going through this course right now. It's called Positive Intelligence. Are you guys familiar with that? It's kind of, similar to what you mentioned. These negative emotions that we have, even these triggers, right? They're based on past experiences, and our past experiences are designed to teach us, right? Help us make better choices next time. These triggers, they compare it to putting your hand on a hot stove, right? They're a signal. We don't put our hand on a hot stove, feel the heat and stay there, right? We put the
Right.
hand on our hot stove and we pull it away, right? We resolve the issue or we move on to, better the situation. And yet so many people are living in this constant automated trigger or trauma response without pulling their hand away from the stove. So it sounds like essentially what you guys are doing are, like you said, cleaning the slate and allowing people to move on from that, even maybe not even necessarily feel the stove, right? But it's a more subconscious program. Is that accurate? Is that kind of a fair comparison?
Yeah, and that actually brings up another thing to what makes change actually work. The way that change works when it happens really fast has to do with exactly the concept you're talking about there. When you put your hand on a hot stove, your immediate reaction is to pull it away. And in fact, all the negative triggers that we're talking about are reactive, meaning they're away from motivators. You're moving away from something. It's like anger. No, I don't want to feel that. Sadness. I don't want to feel that. Fear. Don't want to feel that. Any negative emotion that you bring up, people don't like wallowing in those. They want to avoid them. They want to move away from them. And so,
Some people.
and so what really happens when change work works is it moves a person from being reactive to responsive. And what that looks like is, instead of having an away from reaction, now I'm moving towards something that I do want instead of moving away from what I don't want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Once we resolve negative emotions, now what they're looking for in their life, what they're gravitating toward, are positive emotions.
Yeah. Positive motivators toward the good versus just moving toward, we call it like comparisons, like getting off of your hell island and, to heaven island, right? It's in whatever marketing, things like that. We're either trying to get people off of here or moving people to here, right? That is, you can take different angles in how you market. So yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And it's always more powerful to have them be moving toward what they want versus getting away from what they don't, because your body and your brain is used to that. It feels safe, even if it's uncomfortable. A lot of times, as I'm sure you're aware, it's not uncomfortable enough to make change until it's something usually super damaging, whatever, traumatic, or like a medical diagnosis or things like that really like snap people into action. So I love that concept of motivating toward the positive versus away from the negative, because I do feel like it's far more powerful than the latter. So.
And the other thing about that is, as far as motivation is concerned, if we're moving away from something we don't want, that thing has to be present for us to be motivated. If it isn't there, we're not motivated to move, right? And so it actually creates this vicious cycle of bringing things that motivate us into our lives, things that are away from motivators, so that they're present, so that we'll move. And then basically keeping that cycle going of drawing these negative motivators into our lives. Switching a person from being away from to toward motivated actually removes a lot of problems from their life.
Yeah, that's a vicious cycle, right? Kids sucking away. I need more motivation to get out of here. So I'm curious. My first thought, obviously, as a health coach, is that people who lose weight and gain it back, right? Ton of factors, but their motivation, right? If they don't have the right motivation to lose the weight, once the weight is gone, now what are you doing, right? What are you working towards or away from, right? From the original point. Do you feel like that? I mean, is that an accurate kind of observation? Do you feel like that plays a role?
Absolutely. Because if a person wants to lose weight, it's usually that they're moving away from the body image that they have, rather than imagining what they want to look like or feel like, and then moving toward that.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. We use a lot of kind of future visionary questions and visualization and stuff like that in our coaching. So I'm glad to hear that from your end, that that's actually more powerful. So what happens, and if you don't mind, obviously sticking with maybe the health aspect of what you guys do, what actually happens in someone's life when they let go of these unconscious blocks, when they move away from running from this negative and move toward this positive motivation? What actually happens in their life, maybe in their thought processes, like a little bit deeper than what we already talked about?
So as far as health concerns, there's a lot specifically that happens in regard to health. So let's say a person has a lot of anger, that can actually affect the heart in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
A person has a lot of guilt, it can actually generate conflict at the unconscious level and create cancer in the body. And so negative emotions and limiting beliefs actually have a direct effect on our health. So by resolving those and resolving limitations, we actually create a neurology that supports health, that supports what we want from health. So that's a very interesting move there. But for the most part, like in general, a person stops getting emotionally hijacked. That's the big thing that happens. But as far as health is concerned, letting go of negative emotions especially will have a direct impact on health.
Can you just real quick for listeners, maybe define what limiting beliefs are? Since that's a powerful part of what you guys do, and I think really important to the health journey. I mean, again, specifically based on what I've seen.
Yeah. So you want like an example of a limiting belief?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, it could show up in a couple of different ways. Like usually the ones I think of are regarding money, because I
Okay.
worked a long time as a profitability coach. So a lot of times it's like I don't deserve money, or
I don't deserve to be healthy, or I don't deserve to have the happiness maybe that comes along with being healthy, or the lifestyle, okay.
or like in relationships, maybe a person who doesn't feel like they deserve love, or somebody who says, I can't trust people. That is a limiting belief that started with a limiting decision. So they made a decision at some point that they couldn't trust people, and it reinforces a belief in their mind. And so that belief actually affects what's important to them, their values, and it will modify or influence, probably influence is a better word, all the things that they do, the actions that they do or don't take, okay, in life. And so it puts guardrails on what they do.
Yeah. So it's a either self-concept or a thought process that they have about themselves that actually quite literally limits what they're capable of ultimately. Right?
Yeah.
That's a fair definition.
Yeah. And so what the unconscious mind will do when there's a limitation like that, any of those limitations, a negative emotion or a limiting belief or conflict at the unconscious level or prime concern, there's actually several different things that could happen within a person. Anytime those things are happening, the unconscious mind will actually sabotage, not purposefully. It doesn't do it on purpose. It's more of like an accident. It'll sabotage your results because it's actually focused on something that isn't the result. It's not focused on creating an optimal result. So by resolving those things, we can actually change the unconscious mind to support you unconsciously so that it's not sabotaging and it's actually supporting all your goals. So that's a major difference there too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. And like you said, it's what is it, like 70 or maybe like 70 to 90% of our thoughts, our habits, our actions by the time we're 30 are completely automatic. And so if we have this programming that is essentially self-sabotage that's another kind of aspect of it, but sabotaging whatever goals we have, they're trying to change our subconscious programming that was put in place essentially by the time we're like 5 to 7, I believe is the age range, right? Then life's going to be really hard.
I like to say that the unconscious mind is 80% pre-sponsible for all of our decision making.
Yeah, that's powerful. So, can you share just a little about your process? Because from what I understand, it's purely based on talking and conversation. You guys give like homework, either like journaling or questions, things to ponder on. So, okay, you're shaking your head. So, tell us a little bit about the process of what you guys actually do and how the results are achieved.
Okay, so
We ask a lot of questions.
I would say so. You start with your kind of pre-interview, which is like the consult, figuring out if you guys can help, all of that. So walk me through from like the start of that.
well, actually, all of it is questions.
Yeah.
So from the consultation through the end, we are mostly asking questions. During the consultation, of course, we're asking questions to find out if we can help somebody and how we might do that. And then we're putting together a package for them that fits, how it would help them personally. But when we get into it, the first half of or first major part of doing a breakthrough is finding out everything that holds a person back. And so we just ask a lot of questions there. And even when we get into the breakthrough part, when we're having a person walk through how to get rid of those things, we're still asking them a lot of questions. And we're asking them to imagine certain things happening, certain scenarios, which walk them through letting go of those things. Did you have more to add? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's great. That's very succinct.
So it's all essentially you're asking questions, allowing people to almost come to their own conclusions in terms of how to, or in terms of the reprogramming. Is that accurate? Or are the questions you're asking more guided to where it's like, do you think this or this? Is there anything like that? Or is it
The reason that we ask questions, what we're actually looking for is uncovering the unconscious thought patterns that are happening behind the actions. And generally, people aren't able to recognize those for themselves.
Right.
If they could, people wouldn't need anybody's help. Just, figure it all out. So, the questions that we ask are very deep. And they're most likely questions that people have not been asked before. And once we uncover the unconscious patterns that people have, we're able to in our intervention portion, we're able to go in and resolve those limiting beliefs and decisions and negative emotions that we talked about.
Or parts or prime concerns or whatever comes up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we also, as part of the whole process, help people to focus on what it is that they do want instead. What's their preferred outcome? And the work that we do really clears all the stuff that's happening unconsciously that's in the way of getting to that outcome. And on top of that, we help people to imagine that outcome. What else?
Yes. So let me go off of that real quick.
Go ahead.
What happens with a lot of people who have self-sabotage or their unconscious mind is sabotaging them is they try to think to the future of what they want and they have trouble seeing it. And that is, if you can think about what you want, but you can't really imagine having it, that's a strong indicator that your unconscious mind is sabotaging you. Because in a perfect world, or in your perfect neurology, without limitations, you would be able to imagine anything and actually feel like, yes, I can have that. And if you can't feel like, yes, I can have that, whatever I want, sorry, you say subconscious. I like to use the word unconscious. There's an unconscious limitation keeping you from having it. And so one of the big tests for a person that's gone through the process is, can you now imagine having what you want in the future? And can you imagine it clearly? And is there anything inside you saying you can't have it? Or is all your systems say, yes, I can have that? And if all their systems say, yes, I can have that, and there's nothing stopping them, then they go out and they get it. And so really where we're taking away, or not really taking away, but resolving is all the away from motivators, all the things that you don't want in your life. We're getting rid of all that so that you can only have what you do want.
Gotcha. Can you give me an example of a question that would be health related that helps people dive into something?
No. I don't like sharing questions like that, because when you ask a question that powerful, it has to be asked a certain way. It's very I almost like to use the word sacred. It's a sacred question. You don't just use it in passing. And I don't tell it to people before I ask them that question. Because I want to get their unconscious response. I want to get the shock factor. I want all of it. I
Right.
want their whole response from that. So no, I don't want to share that. Okay.
That's fair. No, I like it. Go ahead. Do you have something to say, Lori?
Yeah, the other reason that I would add is, and this is a phrase Ian likes to use, sometimes when we give out a little bit of information about what we do, people want to take that and figure out how to use it on their own, and it gives them premature closure to the situation. And so they don't really get to the bottom of the problem when they think, and I'm a do-it-yourselfer. Like, trust me, I've tried everything myself. So I'm one of those people. You can't get down to the problem without somebody outside of your own mind
Right.
looking at it with you, because you wouldn't be stuck otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't want to give just enough information for people to get more stuck and think that they've got it figured out. And then, a few days later or a month later, they realize, okay, I'm still just as stuck as ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. We're actually going to cover that a little bit later. We're going to cover more about that.
Sorry. Okay, cool. Yeah, I totally understand, because that with what I do is like, I feel like macros is a comparable three things. Sure, I could give you a set of macros and be like, okay, I'll go hit my macros. It's like, okay, well, that might work for a little bit, but there's a reason that you haven't been able to stick to whatever you've been doing. And it likely has a lot to do with up here and how you're implementing these things, even if it's macros, or people who say that macros didn't work for me. It's like, well, yeah, because there's a lot of other factors that go into being healthy and optimal hormone balance and all these things, right? So totally understand the sentiment there. So can you walk us through a kind of breakthrough moment with a client that really stuck with you? Again, ideally if you have some health things, but I know you have money things. So whatever you have.
Actually, we got stuff in every genre here, but probably the most recent thing that's really stuck out in our minds is we're working with a couple. And what's interesting about working with a couple is that their paradigms affect each other. So you've got negative emotions, you've got strategies that either are or aren't being fulfilled. And then you've got all the other things that are going on inside of them. Like, do they have conflicts? Do they have prime concerns? Do they have parts? Do they have any of that kind of stuff going on? And so as we've worked with them, it's interesting to be able to see how this person's getting triggered by the other person, and how the other person is triggering that other person back, and how their unfulfilled strategies are causing some of those triggers and stuff. And so by doing all that investigative work on both of them, it's really fun, because we can clearly see how their paradigms affect each other. And then we can clearly see what to do, so that when they come together after we're done, they don't need us anymore. They can have the kind of relationship that they want, fulfilling each other in the best way possible, getting rid of all their triggers. So that's a real big one. In regard to health, you're dealing with a person's paradigm affecting their body. In sales or in business, it's the person's paradigm affecting their success. And so we've seen a lot of changes in all of those areas. I think the biggest changes I've seen I would say the most measurable changes I've seen are in success, because it's measurable. If somebody's making a certain amount of money and then they go and make another amount of money after you're done, you can measure that and compare the two. And
Although you did, I think you shared a story, agree about somebody who lost like 100 pounds after working with you. Was that, so, and that was, had he come to you for health, or was that unrelated? That's what I thought. He had come
success and just mentioned in passing, oh, my doctor says I'm going to die if I don't lose a bunch of weight. And so then I went into, started asking health questions and finding out what was there. And then they just dropped weight really quickly.
Yeah. So super powerful outcomes. And so we've talked, a lot about like the health and money, but work with people who are dealing with things like major grief, anxiety, deep emotional pain. So what is something that you wish more people actually understood about those experiences and how they are impacted?
You don't have to relive those experiences to release the negative emotions that you're associating with them.
Yeah, like grief, anxiety, deep emotional pain, things like that. A lot of people think they have to process that. Like, oh, I've got to deal with it. I've got to be sad for a while so I can process that. And, that's one way to deal with it. That's the long way around. It's much faster and actually more complete because it's not just getting rid of negative emotions. It's not just about resolving those. And this is something Lori actually brought up, and it might come up later. What we're actually getting is a learning that we missed out on. So what causes a negative emotion to be held within the neurology is that we didn't have the knowledge that we have now. Okay. Like when you're a kid, you make decisions and stuff in a split second, and they're limiting because you don't see the way that an adult sees, or you don't see the way you'd see in the future. Right. And so in the future, you look back on those decisions and you go, why did I do that? I mean, that wasn't helpful. Like I remember when I was a kid, my brother's friends didn't treat me the same, because my brother was older and they were all older. And so they didn't treat me the same. And I made vows like, I'm never going to talk to people again. I mean, that's a limiting decision. I mean, and obviously I'm never going to talk. It's not like I'm never going to talk to anyone ever again, but I made that decision consciously and unconsciously at a very young age, several times. That's how limiting decisions kind of get started. And we don't necessarily learn from those until later in life when we go back and try to pick up whatever we were missing in the first place. And it's actually picking up those learnings that allow us to let go of the emotion that was behind it.
Gotcha. But just to clarify, because you mentioned like you don't have to relive those things. So unlike a lot of other traditional therapies, I would say. I mean, even some non-traditional ones that I've personally used, there is some aspect of reliving that occurs or re-experiencing parts of the situation that you feel like maybe contributed to whatever emotion you're feeling. And so that's a big difference of what you guys do compared to other therapies, correct? One of them. So what would you say to someone who has maybe tried a lot of those things, but still feels really stuck and is maybe hesitant to try what you guys offer?
So the thing about all those other experiences like journaling and affirmations and going to see a therapist and things like that, a lot of times, and even with the therapists, counseling, those types of people, they're dealing with conscious level advice. They aren't dealing with the unconscious mind. And one of the things that I like to tell people when they say, what's NLP? I say it's a way of negotiating with the unconscious mind so we can make changes really quickly. They don't negotiate with the unconscious mind when you go see a therapist.
Right.
They give you conscious mind answers. When you go to journal, you're doing a conscious mind thing. I mean, there's some unconscious stuff that can come out, but if you're not trained to look through that and pick out what you're supposed to be picking out so that you understand your unconscious mind, and there's another level to that, you won't understand what you can change. The other part of that is, let's say I'm the one, because I'm already trained. Let's say I'm writing my own stuff out. The problem is I'll self-edit. Instead of writing down a limitation, I'll rearrange it in my mind so that I write it down so that it's empowering automatically. Okay. So I can't even find my own limitations unless I'm talking to somebody who's trained to look for them. So that's a major thing about that too. So the thing is, a lot of those methods are created in a way that keeps you stuck. So I don't know if you've ever gone to see a therapist, but a lot of the questions that they'll ask are, why do you think you have this problem?
Knew I wouldn't be here.
And here's the thing, if you see a counselor or a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist or anyone who says, why do you have a problem? Or why do you think you have this problem? Fire them immediately. Here's why.
Be my first reel right here.
Yeah. If you tell somebody why you think you have a problem, you've just given them all the reasons that reinforce you having a problem. Those reinforce the problem. They don't cause you to be free. They cause you to be more stuck. So let's say you're journaling to try to figure out why you have a problem. You're actually causing yourself to be more stuck because you're reinforcing the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I get you're focused on, I would say that goes back to you're looking in the past, like, why is this? And it's like, oh, because of the, you're looking through those negative reinforcements or that negative, motivation versus the opposite. So that definitely makes sense.
And if you're looking for reasons, you'll find them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Affirmations. The thing about affirmations is it's like a conscious mind tool. That tries to reframe a negative. So let's say I've got a negative thought in my head and I try to put out a positive affirmation. The negative thought doesn't go away. It's not like overwriting it on a hard drive. Okay, I'm just adding another thought that is conflicting to the original negative thought. I'm actually adding conflict to my neurology by trying to do that. And so it's better to resolve the problem than to try to add on a positive spin on it that actually just leaves the problem in the background.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense. So you've kind of answered some of the questions down there. So let's jump to, I think that's the last one.
No.
No.
Why is it so hard to think your way out of emotional pain?
Oh, I felt like you kind of answered that one already with the awareness, but yeah. So okay, I'll ask that one. We'll edit that part out. So in light of some of that, again, like you mentioned, self-awareness and wanting to maybe try and reframe your own negative thoughts or whatever, why is it actually so hard to consciously think your way out of some of these negative emotional patterns by yourself?
So there's two parts to this answer. The first part is that awareness is a conscious mind tool. So being aware that you have a problem and aware of what the problem is all conscious mind. Okay. It's not actually getting into what the unconscious mind pattern is. And so you can be fully aware. I can be fully aware and still not be able to help myself. I still need to talk to this one and be like, here's the problem. And then she can listen objectively, because everything that comes out of my mouth is subjective to me, but to her, it's objective. You know, she can look at it from a different perspective. And so that's where that helps a lot. So yeah, self-awareness is totally a conscious mind tool. And when you are self-aware, again, this goes back to the previous one where, let's say I'm self-aware of why I have a problem. All I'm doing again is reinforcing why I have a problem, right? And so it actually, it's a trap.
It's a trap. Don't go there.
Yeah. It's a trap.
Okay. That makes sense. Absolutely. And so tell us about the breakthrough experience, your kind of key programming. What is it? Who is it for? What can someone expect coming out of it?
So it's 2 to 3 very focused sessions where we will ask a lot of questions and then take you through a sort of guided meditation to resolve everything that's holding you back.
We feel it's for high achievers who want to leverage their unconscious mind to get better results. Like I said, with limitations, your unconscious mind is constantly sabotaging your results.
Mhm.
Again, not purposefully. It just does it on accident. It's just programmed that way.
A safety thing.
Yeah.
It's comfortable. That's what we have programmed to survive, quote unquote, in whatever environment we have been in based on our strengths, abilities, and what's been given to us. So that's just to explain that
Yeah.
concept a little bit.
And the best part about this is when a person comes to us, it's not like we decide how to reprogram them.
Right.
They decide what they want to change. It's up to us to find out what all their limitations are and then show it to them. But if somebody said, well, I like that limitation, I'm going to keep it. That's their choice. I mean, I've never had that happen, but
Yeah. No,
usually
give me
when I
that ball
show
and
the
chain
list,
back.
they're like, yes, I want to get rid of all of that. But
Yeah.
the change when a person goes through this kind of thing is that they get to sort of take control of their own programming. You get to take control of how your unconscious mind is going to support you in the future. And that's the best part. It's not something that we're deciding for you. It's something that you actually have full conscious control over through the whole process.
Love that. Love that. This is a very powerful modality, it sounds like. And I personally am looking forward to working with you guys more. And I believe as of now, you guys aren't online anywhere. Is that accurate? You're purely local to Grants Pass, Oregon. Is that correct?
Well, we do have a website.
We have a website. We don't do Zoom.
Okay. But yeah, so as far as your services go, in order to work with you, you have to be local. But obviously, if somebody is interested in NLP, they can look for practitioners worldwide. But I will link your website and your information in the show notes for anyone local here who is looking for this kind of guidance. Outside of that, what is one thing that you want people to take away from this concept of something they can use to make shifts in their life, and even if it's just in their mind, to come talk to you guys? Because I think that's a big one.
Like one thing or two.
So I want people to take away from this that they don't have to live their life the way that they have been. They can actually make positive changes very quickly and live the life that they dream of.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah. That's a pretty strong statement.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think I've already like beaten this horse a lot.
One more hit.
I think the difference of having your unconscious mind support you rather than sabotage your results is like consistently 5 times better. And I say that because it's measurable. Whenever I've worked with somebody who wanted to make more money, the average has been 5 times. They multiply their income by 5, and that's what they make. Sometimes it's by 3, sometimes it's by 10, but the average is by 5. And so from the look of it, from my perspective, it almost seems like people are about 20% as efficient as they could be. In other words, their unconscious mind is 80% sabotaging what they could have.
Wow.
That's powerful. That's a powerful statistic to leave off on. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Lori. This was amazing and a very powerful conversation. I think a lot of people desperately need to hear. Like I said, I'm excited to work more with you guys, and I hope to spread the word about this powerful tool that people have accessible to them. I'm sure it's worldwide at this point, but definitely here in the United States. And locally. So if you're in Grants Pass, then go ahead and click the link in the bio. And otherwise, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Brooke. It's been a pleasure.
What a powerful conversation. I think the biggest takeaway here is that real freedom isn't just about working harder on yourself. It's about working at the right level where your patterns are created in the first place. Ian and Lori's approach is such a refreshing reminder that you don't have to spend years unpacking the past to create this deep, lasting change. So if you've been nodding along because you've tried all the things, but you still feel stuck, this might be your sign to try something different. I will link all of their information in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your heart with us today. To everyone listening, I hope this gives you permission to believe that your change can be faster, easier, and more complete than you've ever been led to believe. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fitness Simplified podcast. We are stoked to have you join us on your journey to better health and fitness. If you have any questions, suggestions for future topics, or you just want to chat, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Brooke_Elysian and Facebook linked in the show notes or via our website, ElysianWomen'sWellness.com. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, we'd be thrilled if you could take a half second to leave us a 5-star rating and review so that you can help others find our show. If there was something you heard that was helpful or impactful, please screenshot, tag me, and share what it was so that we can bring you more. Plus, you'll be entered into our monthly Legion Recharge post-workout giveaway. New episodes drop every other Monday, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. Thanks for listening.